I'm Markia.
Want to hear something scary?
Graveyard smash. The creature was careful to hide the body it had just drained of blood. Even on Halloween, it couldn't just leave evidence lying around. It chose its victims well, people that wouldn't be missed. But sometimes it liked to have fun too, raise the stakes. The nightmarish creature of the night smiled, looking at the crumpled party invitation. Time for the games to begin. Sina arrived home after school to a dark and silent house. This wasn't unusual. Her parents worked long and unsociable hours, but she had other things on her mind. She stared at the flyer in her hand. Graveyard Smash at OWC, Friday, October 31st, 11 p.m. till whenever. Bring drinks, YOLO. Snitches get stitches. The legendary Halloween party occurred each year and was strictly invite only. She felt a flutter of anticipation because she knew if this was the party to be seen at, then Dylan would be there. She tried to call her parents just to say she was home, but the line rang out. The party was the talk of school the following day. As she sat at her desk, Sina felt her cell vibrate in her pocket. Job not finished. Hope to be back before 31st, but do recon just in case. Love you, M&D. She felt a pang of sadness that her parents were caught up with work. After class, Sina headed over to Old Wakefield Cemetery, strolling around the familiar yet empty surroundings. It was overgrown in places, markers crumbling, left to rack and ruin. Soon, the tranquility would be replaced with partying teens. There was a slight chill in the air, the sun setting by the time she returned to her silent house. She slept pitifully that night, tossed and turned. Eventually, around 6 a.m., Sina gave in, checked her cell. Problem, can't get back tonight. We trust you. You got this. Love you, M&D. Her stomach dropped as she read the message. She was alone. There was an element of excitement in the air as she wandered back home after school. Little kids rushed around, dressed as witches and ghosts. Stoops decorated with pumpkins. But she didn't feel festive. She thought only of Dylan. Arriving back at the empty house amplified the enormity of the task Sina had ahead of her. She wished her parents could have given her some reassurance. Dread gnawed at the pit of her stomach as she got ready for the party. She walked around the gathering, checking out who was there, trying to blend in and not show her nerves. It was dark in the graveyard, but jack-o'-lanterns had been set up, casting an eerie glow. Sina was on the lookout for one thing only: Dylan. Thanks to her earlier recon, she knew the layout. There were around 50 people at the party, plenty enough to be able to slip away without anyone noticing. Suddenly, she saw him. Her palms felt sweaty. She needed to get him alone. Bravely, she sidled over, touched his arm. The electricity between them was obvious. He grinned, nodding his head in the direction of one of the gravestones at the edge of the party perimeter. "Shall we?" She smiled nervously, doing her best to hide her nausea. As they moved further away from the others, she pressed her hand to her bag, gaining reassurance from its contents. Her heart beat a little faster, blood thundering through her veins. She knew Dylan could sense it. He just didn't know why. He led her over to the furthest spot where there was still the smallest amount of light.
"This will do,"
he purred. Her breath hitched as her thoughts began racing. This is it. My one-way ticket to the big time. Once I do this, there is literally no going back. He lowered himself to the ground, smiling. Sina inhaled as she bent down, heart pounding. She whipped the stake from her bag and deftly plunged it straight into his chest. The surprise lasted no more than a few seconds before Dylan ripped the weapon free. his beautiful face vanishing as his true vampiric form was revealed. Fangs protruded from his mouth, and he snarled at her, attempting to reach her neck. She knew he'd rip out her throat in a flash if he got close enough. Sina quickly pulled the crucifix from under her shirt, and he hissed, repelled by the object. Then, without a word, he disappeared into the darkness. What had she done? Somehow she'd missed his heart. Her hands were shaking. Her head felt like it might explode. Her first ever hunt, and she had failed. The severe repercussions of her failure she would learn all too soon. To be continued.